it's super important to document your life in a meaningful way. I always add like more questions than answers when it comes to things like the sourcing of like human hair extensions. The experience with natural girl wigs exposed me to a lot of what was wrong in the hair extension industry and also like what the opportunities were. So entrepreneurship is just a lot of calculation, thinking about where you are, what is available to you, what is accessible to you, using your own strengths, and also being very aware of what your weaknesses are.
Welcome to the Scaling My Startup podcast by Narrative Labs. I'm your host, Tallulah Doherty Aditono. And today I am joined by a visionary entrepreneur. She is Oluremi Martins. I have a whole bio. I'm going to read it because it's very impressive. Who started building Natural Girl Wigs, a brand that reached women in over 60 countries. After spotting gaps in the global hair industry, she then pivoted to launch Regirl and founded Texture Science Labs, Nigeria's first hair innovation lab. From scaling an e-commerce business to pioneering lab-made hair with Rexy, that's trademarked, Remy's journey is a masterclass in resilience, reinvention, and building with purpose. Remy, welcome to the Scaling My Startup podcast.
Wow, thank you so much. That was really
Uh,
so humbling. Thank you.
No, you did that. You did that. It's exciting. So I just want to delve straight into your journey. I want to talk about sort of before we get to Regirl, it all started with Natural Girl Wigs. And I think
Wig.
you even had a community before that, before you started with Natural Girl
Yes,
Wigs. So take us
yes.
back to the very, very beginning. How did everything start? And did you always have this desire to be in the hair industry, in the beauty industry?
Yeah. So actually, hair was always just something that I really liked, and beyond even just the aesthetics, I was always curious about as well. But I was working in marketing. I was working as a digital marketing executive in a boutique agency in Lagos when I actually started Natural Girl Weeks. I actually had just gotten like promoted at the time. And for me, it actually started from my own frustrations. So at the time, I was really experimenting with my natural hair. And like my favorite kind of styles to have on would be something where I'm just like matching my hair texture. Things I'm able to do myself. And my go to were things like clippings, were things like, just things that matched my hair texture. And it was really challenging finding that at the time, and even when I found options, they were either like too expensive or I had to like import them, which was like always ridiculous, right? So I thought to myself that, oh, if
Yeah.
I really wanted these things, I mean, we have a lot of black women in Nigeria, is like black people, right? And people wanted, obviously,
Yes.
would maybe want like hair extensions that match their hair. So if I have this problem, there are probably other people that have the problem out there as well. So I decided to start a blog first, like an Instagram blog. Instagram blogs were like really popular at the time to sort of like validate this whole idea. So on the blog, I would post like black hair inspo, black hair beauty, and people started to like, DM and say, "Oh, do you have this hair? Can I get this hair? Where will I be able to get this from?" And for me, that was what sort of like validated the idea that there were other people who wanted this product as well. And we launched on the back of that, to a community that already had like desire for the kind of product. And that's how like Natural Girl started. Natural Girl Week started rather.
Fantastic. So that's really, really interesting. And I want to know if you saw traction from the very beginning, or if it took a bit of time. Because I know sometimes when you launch a business, it's not always immediate. It doesn't always just hit. It may take a bit of time, bit of marketing, and further efforts in order to sort of start generating sales. So how was it when you first launched with Natural Girl Wigs?
To be honest, I think we had traction from day zero, to be honest, because the page already sort of like had the DNA of the products that we were going to launch. So as I said, like I already had people asking if we were even selling these products before we launched them, right? So obviously, like it didn't like blow up overnight, but in terms of like having customers who wanted to buy the product, we already had that, and we also like it was also like the pre-order model where people would pay and then we get the product. So it was like really, it just validated that, oh, people really wanted this. Like if I look back now, just comparing with like other things I've done, I think the traction was quite fast.
Amazing, amazing. So let's go on to, the fact that you were able to scale quite successfully. And I don't have this wrong, because it was part of my research that you still have customers in over 60 countries. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, we were primarily, we sold to people in more than 70 countries probably. But like the primary
Wow.
markets for us were the US, the UK, and Nigeria, right? I mean, obviously sometimes
Okay.
people order from like all of these countries, but if I conceptualize it to like what the primary markets were, it was the US, the UK, and Nigeria.
Okay, fantastic. So, for any e-commerce entrepreneurs who are watching and listening, and they're thinking, I would not mind having customers in, abroad, outside of Nigeria, whether it's, within Africa, Pan-African, or internationally, how are you able to reach those clients in the US, and the UK and other parts of the world? Was it ads? Was it the community? What were the main drivers?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, the core drivers was that we're very digital first. I'm not gonna lie, my experience as a marketing executive really played a lot of part in me just understanding the social landscape, understanding like how to create content that is not necessarily localized, but could connect with anybody who has like similar pain points, right? And I
Yeah.
think that things have actually gotten way easier. I think that today, if you launch a brand, you can reach anybody. But at that time, for us, it was being digital first. It was understanding the customer profile that we had. So when I thought of the
Hmm.
business, I wasn't really thinking Nigeria or Lagos or US. I was really just thinking about Black women, right? And Black women are like everywhere. They're in these locations. And like, what were the primary challenges they had with their hair? What are the challenges? And so because had like a deep understanding of like those challenges, it was really easy to create content that connected with that, right? So we're not just like showcasing the product, which is what sometimes people do. What we're doing is we're showing, like demonstrating how those products are relevant in your day to day. What are the challenges that people had with hair, and how like does this product come in? What is the use cases for like how this product fits into their lives? And so because of that, people were finding us on social really easily through hashtags, through people resharing our content because they connect with like the things that we're saying, the kind of women we're also using in like our videos or like our pictures. We're also like really, relevant for the kind of community that we're trying to reach, right? Another thing I'm also going to mention is we also did a lot of like gifting. The minute that I saw that uh people were finding us organically through Instagram, through search engine, I knew that we could double down on this, right? And what we did was we identified influencers, and not just like really big influencers. Um, I don't know if you can still hear me.
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay, so we identified like influencers, and not just like influencers that had like really big numbers, but we identified influencers that sort of like connect to the kind of audience we are trying to reach, and then we'll give to them products. I was doing a lot of the outreach myself, and I would just message them and like, oh, I'm building this business from Lagos. This is what we've done. This is what we are doing differently. I would really love to send you a product. Obviously, we got a lot of no's, but we also got a lot of yes, like people that were really interested. And when they saw the products, because of the thoughts that went into like how we were making our products really different, they would happily like share these videos and like, just show up with the product in a way that matched what we're trying to represent. And that really worked for us as well. Of course, we did ads because the organic was doing very well. It made sense to like tap into ads as well, to use it to just like, scale up the reach that we had. So I think those were like the combination of things that we did that made it work.
I think it's fascinating that you sort of
Okay.
got traction organically on the whole, and then you're able to build on that, with ads, and with gifting. So I think that's a really, really good sort of playbook that other brands can definitely
Yes.
learn from. So let's talk about making the move from natural girl wigs to regirl. What was sort of the catalyst for that pivot, and how did it feel? Was there any sort of trepidation, because you had already been so successful with natural girl wigs, and now you're sort of taking the business, it's not a completely different direction, but it was definitely a rebrand. And there was some innovative elements that were added in terms of the Rexy, the lab made hair, and all of that. So take us through your thought process on the rebrand brand, and then give us an idea of the journey as well. Because now I know I don't know. I'm assuming that previously the hair had sort of been imported, whereas with Natural Girl Wigs, it's all made here in your lab. So take us through, because that's a whole new adventure. So take us through that process.
Actually started from natural glow to creating TSL, right? And TSL, for anyone who doesn't know, is Texture Science Labs, which is our innovation lab for hair extensions that we created. And so for me, like the experience with natural glow weeks exposed me to a lot of what was wrong in the hair extension industry, and also like what the opportunities were for like building like something, bigger and more meaningful in my opinion. um, and so one of the primary issues I had was like supply chain issues, where there is no proper product audit trail for like this is exactly what we are getting, this is like how this is made, this is how we could, had like a percentile progress to like the quality of this thing. And you hear stories around like what I ordered versus what I got from like the consumer POV, but it's actually a primary issue even with like, suppliers to like vendors, because there isn't just like any proper structure the way it is in like other tangents in like beauty, like skincare or like hair care and all of these things, right? And so for me, that was one issue. The second issue is I always add like more questions than answers when it comes to things like the sourcing of like human hair extensions, what is actually in this thing, right? And another issue for me was, I wouldn't say an issue, but something that showed me opportunities was just also like what consumer behavior was in terms like how people were actually purchasing things. So at Natural Girl Weeks, we're selling both human hair and synthetic hair. And some of like our most successful products were actually synthetic hair products that happened to be manageable, easy to wear. And that just showed me one thing, that people wanted hair extensions, but people wanted products that as long as it's something that I can just put on and go, as long as it's easy to manage, as long as it looks cool, right? A lot of times the origin isn't really like an issue. And for me, the combination of all of those issues made me started thinking of a future where the standard was zero human hair, but without the drawbacks of like of traditional synthetic hair, which is it had to be manageable, it had to be soft, it had to look cool, it couldn't look shiny or like weird. And also it could be from like a source that you trust in terms of like what the processes are, what the safety was, like all of those things, right, which are like consumer issues, right? And so the change from like Natural Girl Weeks to Regal wasn't really just about like the brand, it was about what made sense for what we were building at Texture Science Labs. So going from Natural Girl Weeks to Regal was because the pivot made sense for us to launch or create a brand that could leverage what we were creating at Texture Science Labs, right? It was going to
Yeah.
be about the innovation. It was going to be about the easy to wear angle. It was going to be like how accessible it was for like everyone, right? Natural Girl Wigs was very niche about, and it's for a specific kind of women. Whereas Regal is about like this brand that is built up this product that is for everyone, right? And so that's the infrastructure of like how the brands had to like be repositioned. But it was always about what we were building at Texture Science Labs and the right brand to like drive that conversation for us.
Fantastic. I have a lot of follow up questions. I really think what you said is just extremely mind blowing because, previously you were more like just like an e-commerce brand where you would get, the product from your suppliers, and then you would do your marketing and your branding and all of that, and then sell it on to your consumers.
Yeah.
But with Texture Science Labs, the business has really pivoted to be sort of like an innovation, like you're innovating in the hair industry in terms of creating a certain type of synthetic hair that, as you've said, is more manageable, doesn't have, it's not shiny and all of that. Because I think there's a bit of snobbery I've noticed in the hair world where people say, oh, this is, this human hair, and this human hair is Vietnamese hair, and that's why it's 2 million naira or something. You know what I mean? There's that sort of, there's levels of hair, right? And
Yes.
previously, which I think is changing a lot, synthetic hair had sort of been looked down upon as like the cheaper option. And it's, oh, you just manage synthetic hair until you save up enough to get human hair, which is definitely changing a lot. And I think um some of the big reasons why it's changing is, like things you've mentioned, like people want to know where their hair is being sourced from, and also like safety concerns. I know sometimes there's also concerns about synthetic hair. Not even just synthetic hair, but certain types of hair can be endocrine disruptors. We know
Yeah.
that, like your expressions hair, for example, not to call anybody out, but there has been studies that have shown that that type of hair isn't really so great for long-term use, and it's been linked to certain conditions. So it's a whole lot to communicate to your audience. I want to understand how you've been sort of able to, because with I told you when we met that I love your marketing, I love your products. Even the bob that you were wearing when we met at the Naira Life conference, I was like, this
Yeah,
bob
which
has
is
been
what I'm
following
not
me in my
wearing anything
dreams.
today. And I'm like, but I was just so like, I just got out of the house and I'm like, I really just have to, I really
No,
just have
that's
to get
it.
out of the house if I could make this. Yeah.
Don't worry. Once we go Regirl on Instagram, all the beautiful hair is there. So, how are you able to sort of communicate the message of Regirl? Like you've just said to me, it's not just a rebrand. It's about make you made the hair in house, and also I want to talk about the communicating the value of the brand, and also the in-house innovation, like structuring that, hiring the right people, putting the right processes in place. I imagine that it was sort of quite a big task. How were you able
Yeah.
to do all of that?
So everything started with a vision, right? It started with this vision of like, what if, right? And I think that we've moved from that to just like the reality of what consumers themselves want and like what people are interested in learning as well. I think the right time, the right place, the right product is a metric that has really worked for us. At the time when I started thinking of, texture science, that I didn't even know how I would be able to like communicate this thing that I was building and like why there's a need for it and all of this. But I think that people have also gotten like more inquisitive about like what they are using, especially like with like this research documentation that has been released around like synthetic hair, around the processes for like even human hair, like around like the ethics of like, where is all of this coming from. So like there was this factor of like what the landscape is in terms of like what people are generally interested in. But for us, we had to literally do everything from scratch, and I knew that if this was going to work, we were going to be vertically integrated, which is we had to know the fibers that we were using. We had to be invested in the formulations. We had to create like our texturing formulations, our protein formulations ourselves. And so I went into this knowing that it was going to be like a long road from like just the idea to like the product stage, to reiterating the product, to informing to educating the consumers, to like having the product ready. So I was sort of like, I wouldn't say prepared, but I sort of knew what we were doing. I knew what we were going into, and I knew what it was going to take. And I think one of the things that was also helpful for me was I looked a lot into like adjacent industries, right? When Bill Gates decided that it was going to make like PCs and like Microsoft and all of these things, it wasn't really like something that people were already used to. Like there were questions. They were like, so I looked into a lot of like the adjacent industries that have actually created category and industry shifting products, and like what was the go-to market like? What was the approach like? And for me, a lot of that is like what we implemented and how we sort of like, made this work. Now, in terms of, I think you asked something around like introducing to people. And what I would say is creating innovation sometimes is based on consumer insights, but a lot of times is also like insider insight backed, which is a lot of times consumers don't really know what they want, or they might know what they want in terms of like the use cases, but like what does this like how does this come? And then it takes you being like, you know what, I think this is it and let me go after it. And for me, that was what I did. Because a lot of times, like even in this process, I'm like, oh, am I sure I'm on the right path? Am I sure I'm really doing this? But I had like this very strong desire to go after this because looking into the industry, I knew that this was going to be the future, right? It didn't make sense that women from all over go to Lagos Island and think that they are buying human hair. Like, how many people do we really have for the amount of human hair extensions that we have in the world, right? So sooner or later, I knew that there was going to be like more transparency around the creation of this process. I knew that accessibility had to be a thing. I knew that there had to be some sort of like sanitary standard in the hair extension industry in the way that it's been for like other industries. And when you look at even the landscape now, we have brands like Ruka Hair, we have brands like No Hair, we have like all of these brands coming up now to say that, you know what, there has to be like a standard in the hair extension industry, right? And that's what we started doing at Texture Science Lab, to create this new category for like customers who already care, for customers who are already inquisitive about learning things, for people who were just like about the fashion. And I think that one of the interesting things that we did at Regal is that yes, we are innovation backed. Like this extension is not human hair, it's this new thing. But we also made our styles in a way that even if you didn't care about like Rexy, you would want to like try the styles. And that was like a good entry point for us to get people interested in the product, right? And so we designed our styles to be based on lifestyle, right? So you are the woman that wants to look chic, even though you don't really want to do it so much. You have like spicy icon. Like you're the girl who wants to make a statement. You have like sweet siren. So a lot of our customers are even just buying the product just because of how it looks, just because of how it comes already pre-styled, like how it comes easy for them, right? And then they have an experience with innovation and they touch the air, they feel it, and they're like, oh wow, this actually delivers what they say. And then they become our ambassadors, right? So for me, it's like the 360 thinking of the product. We are working with innovation, but we also want it to be accessible from like a style point of view. We want people to be interested, even if they are not really geeked about the innovation that we are building. That was always going to be like an entry point for us. And then it made it easier. I don't know if I've answered the question about like doing all of this here, but I had to just find people that were interested. I had to find people that were in adjacent industry, but also with skills relevant for like what we were building. I had to find people who were also very interested in doing, new things. Like yesterday, I filmed an episode with like our master texture tech for like our Instagram page. She used to work in one of like the Chinese factories or Chinese companies in Lagos, and they already do a lot of texturing. And I remember when I met her in 2023, and I was talking about like this vision I had, what we're going to do. And she was immediately interested because she had been working at this other place for like 10 years, just doing the same routine thing every
Wow.
single day. And when she came in here, at that time, we just had like the lab, we didn't have like every other thing. And she saw like how it was going to be a place where we're going to be experimenting, where we're going to be trying new things. She saw like the passion in me. And she's like, you know what? I want to do this. I'm going to like come do this with you. And so for me, it was just like looking at what is the talent that is going to be available to me. What are the subset of talents that we need to train from scratch, and that's what we had to do. So there are people that we literally had to like train about this whole process. There are even processes that we had to like innovate, like our own IP, where it's like our own unique process of doing things. And then we had to find people that had maybe like adjacent skills, and it would be easier for them to like fit into all of this. So Texture Science Labs is very vertically integrated, and that's why we can speak for the quality that we produce, because we are involved in like every single step.
I think that what you said is absolutely mind blowing. I've been using the word mind blowing a lot, but it really is. My mind is blown because, innovating in Nigeria with all its challenges really is not easy. I mean, the way you've spoken about it is really so eloquent and so elegant. But I know that, there's so many challenges in our environment, if it's not power, infrastructural and all of that. But you've clearly been able to scale, all of those, just to innovate in this category. So I want to talk maybe a bit about the challenges that you faced and how you've been able to overcome them.
Yeah. So I would say the core challenges is talent and infrastructure, which sort of goes back to what I said previously. But we built for innovation in terms of like our formulas, the techniques, the even like the organization, right, of like people and like what is relevant, and like our own production line and all of these things. And these were things that, to be honest, I didn't really know about, right? Every single thing I know now is because I literally had to immerse myself in learning these things. I had to study, I had to read, I had to like, speak with people who know how to experiment. There were a lot of things that we did that was just like us figuring things out. So that was a problem in itself, right? Which, because I was really passionate, it was easy for me to just keep learning and all of that. But bringing in people to say that I know you've been doing things this way. This is the way we are going to be doing things. And these are like the multiple processes that are involved in this thing. And you sort of have to learn it if you want to be a part of this. So that was like very daunting. One of the biggest challenges that we had, even when we launched, because we had to like, post production for a couple of months, was because we make styles as well, we have to do like our own ventilations ourselves. And that's such a it's a scarce talent here. And even the people that exist, they are like mostly freelancers. So we had to create what we called like our own version of like a beauty school, where we're literally hiring people, paying them to train, and then hiring them if they pass our training technique, right? And that's
Mhm.
something that we had to do like on a very major scale. So think of me trying to like pass 100 people through this school, and I had just 6 weeks, right? We had to go
Wow.
to like the outskirts of Lagos, and that's like a current, stable system that we have now, where we are training people every month, graduating people every month. But at the time that we had to do that, we had 6 weeks to make it happen. If not, we would almost collapse, right? And so just waking up and deciding that, you know what, you said we were going to do this, so you have to do it. You just have to get to work. There were a lot of things that I did that, looking back now, I'm like, where did I get all of that energy from? And there's also like the infrastructure bit as well, like just putting all of these things together. There's a lot of processes in what we do in terms of like the equipment. Some of the equipment we use are not necessarily equipment designed for what we use, but we sort of like had to also get engineers to like help us refine them. And then also obviously the power situation as well. So like those are just like challenges, but what we try to do is we try to factor in all these challenges into like how we think of projects, and then it sort of like makes it, kind of easier to navigate when you sort of like think ahead of the problems and factor them into like when you are doing things.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. I think that you really have a lot of strength, a lot of energy, and a lot of passion for what you do. Because I can see that, that passion is sort of what drives you, and it's really, really, really impressive. So let's talk now about founder-led marketing, because I also have a beauty brand, and it's a press-on nail brand, and my strategist is always sending me your videos, Remy. She's like, "Oh, look at this, your TikTok videos. Like, oh, she's doing so well. I love this, and I always feel a bit guilty, like, oh God, I need to also get on my founder-led marketing game. But I think that, you've really been able to carry your clients along on the journey, not just the company's journey, but also, you as a founder, like, when you wake up, we all know how much you love Beyonce, because I've been doing a bit more research on you. So I know how much you love Beyonce. And, sometimes you show us like what you're eating, you show us a bit about your health and fitness, and you just bring us into your world, which is
Yeah.
really, really nice. So talk to me about that journey, how you started with founder-led marketing, and how you've just been able to sustain it and really give your clients and just general, people on social media a glimpse into who you are sort of behind the brand.
Yeah, thank you. So to be honest, a lot of what I share is what I've always done. It's not really strategic in that, like, oh, this is like founder to like market texture science. I've always like sort of like documented my journey, talked about myself. Before I have like newsletters where I would write about the way I'm thinking about things and like problems that I'm solving. I've sort of always done things like that, even when I worked 9 to 5. So I think for me, it's just like carrying on the same thing to what this my new passion is about, and this my new thing is about. And to be honest, I feel like I'm not doing as much as I would like to because of like how really busy I am. Because there's just like so much I want to share about like the way I work, the way I think, the things that I'm doing. And the way I think about it is it's super important to document your life in a meaningful way, right? It doesn't necessarily have to even be for, oh, I'm doing this so that people could buy the products, even for yourself. Because a lot of times, like as time goes on, you don't even know like the things that you've done. You're not really able to sort of like articulate them or put them together if it's not documented in one way or the other, whether in video form or in written form. And so for me, that's like one thing that I try to do, to just, pause to sort of like document like the things that I'm doing. Business wise, I think that because we are we are doing something that many people do not still understand, it is very important for us to tell stories about it. It is very important for us to be able to craft our own narrative. Like you can't just dismiss the questions, right? And so what we try to do is we are ahead of it before people even ask. We know the questions that people will have about like our product, about the things that we do. So we create content that already sort of like answers that already invites people into our world, into like our thinking. And so before you even ask, we're already explaining to you, but in a way that is relevant to you. We're not just like talking for the sake of talking. Like, what is relevant to our customers? What would they want to know, right? What does it look like inside a extension lab that happens to be in Lagos, right? That's the way we think about things, and that's the way like I also think about things. And so I don't necessarily think that every founder should be under this pressure that, oh, I have to be doing this, I have to be doing that. But I think that it's about thinking about the kind of products that you're also launching. For us, we do have to explain, because again, this is something that many people are not used to. So we need to like tell stories that are relevant for things. I think that there are other ways of like just carrying on your brand without necessarily being the person who is consistently selling to people, which is something that I also avoid. Like on Texture Science Labs or Regal page, I'm not necessarily there every time, talking like, but I'm just sort of like the anchor for like, the brand innovation. And I think that that is something that can be done even outside of videos. It can be done in written form. It can be done through like interviews like this one, where I'm just sort of like talking about like how we did what we did and why we're doing what we do. So that's the way I generally think about it. I think that, the things that come natural to you are ways that you can exploit telling your story, but you don't necessarily have to tap into something that just takes away from what you should be doing, which is like your work.
Your work. Yeah. I mean, I think it's very interesting because recently, I don't know if you saw the Odd Muse controversy on TikTok, where Amy Small, who's the founder of the fashion brand Odd Muse, was getting a lot of backlash because I think it was to do with the components of her clothes. I think they found out it was polyester. She uses a lot of polyester, and then it's meant to be like a mid-tier fashion brand. And she often talks about not being fast fashion. So the whole conversation came about, when you are a founder-led brand, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Because sometimes when people can put a face to the brand, it means that when, cancel culture and all of that, when they come for you, they're coming for you, and that can impact your brand. So they were like, it was a two-sided thing, but I think there's pros and cons to both,
Yeah,
really. I think
yeah.
there's pros and cons to
So
both.
the way I think about it is, I think that the upsides are way more than the downsides, in terms of like, at the end of the day, like as you grow bigger as a business, there's always going to be things that you have to take accountability for. There's
Yes,
always going to be
definitely.
conversations. There's always going to be, you know feedback from like your community. Like, you can't, whether you're a founder led brand or not, like the only difference here is maybe it seems like an attack, or it seems like feedback. Let me not say attack. It seems like feedback to the person versus it's being about the brand and all of that. But I think that businesses would always like learn how to navigate these things,
Of
whether
course.
like, whether thinking ahead of it, or whether just like, tackling it as it comes. And I think Amy, as she's really done a fantastic job of just like building this thing, not just building this thing, but also building the sort of like relevant brand that she's built in this time and age, especially for the size of like the company that she is. I think it's really remarkable. And I'm very sure that she's already finding ways to sort of like navigate this terrain.
Yeah, I actually agree. I actually agree because I haven't thought of it that way, but you shifted my mindset on that particular topic. So that's a good thing. So I want to talk now about the very sort of unsexy side of being a founder, which is like legal protections and ensuring your business is protected legally, especially like with Rexy Lab Made Hair. I know it's trademarked. I don't know if it's trademarked or in the process of being trademarked, but I did see the TM there next to
Yeah,
that. So I want to talk about
yeah.
that.
I mean, it is trademarked.
It is trademarked. Okay, fantastic. So I feel like a lot of founders, whether in the beauty industry or other industries, sometimes, build these really fantastic businesses. And then because they haven't put the right legal protections in place, maybe because they don't know about them or they don't know how to, they can be taken advantage of, or someone else can come along and capitalize on their hard work. So I want to talk to you, Remy, about how you've been able to put the right legal protections in place and how you would advise, other founders who are watching or listening to do the same.
Yeah. So I actually I actually have a very different thinking around this, right? I think that at the end of the day, I don't know, I really want to be very careful about how I frame this. But I think that at the end of the day, what's truly innovative is what you've built that people use and people have adopted, right? So I think that even though it's important to protect what you have, like Rexy Lab Made Air as a name is protected, right? The idea of anyone creating Lab Made Air in future is not something that I can take from anyone, right? If anything, I want an industry where this becomes the standard, right? Where people are also, building this future where we don't use other people's air to sort of like create like fashion for ourselves, right? Ultimately, I think the reason why this is cool is because we've been doing it for years and it seems fine. But imagine if we're all taking other people's skin because they sold it and we're wearing it on ourselves, right? So the way I think about it is that you have to build something first, right? And that thing has to be adapted, or it has to be adopted by your consumers and people that want it. The way the industry is, beauty, fashion, whatever, people will always be inspired by things. And so as a business owner, especially as a small business, I don't think that you should really like expend a lot of your energy on, oh, people copying me, people using my things, people, because how many cases have we really seen gone to court on these things, and people like, you don't really have that time. That is the truth. You don't really have that time. So what I generally advise people to do is protect the things that you can protect, but most importantly, focus on what you are building, because there are
Mm.
some things that you cannot own. There are some things that, yes, you can have like a patent for something, but even patents do expire. There's a
Mm-hmm.
timeline for like, oh, you have a patent on something, on the process. Eventually, like patents do expire, and then people have like access to it. And so if you have like a strong patent, if you have like a strong process, something that you've created, right, you can patent it if that's like the route you want to go. But ultimately, that cannot really be your business model, especially if you are building
Mm.
like a consumer business. So what you really need to pursue is, I need to be able to create something that goes out into the world, that is adopted, and I need to learn how to maximize value from that thing. Because if you created something that you've protected with all the legal whatever in the world, but it's not sold, you're not making money, you've not really done anything,
Mm. Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So, because especially when
True.
in spaces like beauty, fashion, where there's really little that you are doing that people have not done before, I think that your brand name is important to protect. So yes, Texture Science Labs is our name, right? We don't want anybody using our name to sell something. That's a different kind of protection versus me going after protecting the idea of creating lab made hair. Do you understand like what
Yeah.
distinguishes that, right? So I think
Yes.
your
Yes.
name, if you, especially because you've built a brand, we are building a brand. People recognize our brand in public. And so it is important to protect that brand. It is important to protect that name so that people do not get scammed, so that someone does not start another brand and names it our brand another day, leveraging of the work that we've done, the name that we've built for ourselves. But when it comes to the innovation of like this new category, what you can be is become a leader. You can be respected, but you cannot own the idea of someone else trying to do a version of that. And that's the way I see it. I would rather focus my energy on building these products for the consumers that want it, making sure that as many people as possible know about us, and finding ways to distribute this product, maximizing it as much as possible. Rather than just being in this state of, oh, I'm the first person to do this, I'm the only person that can do this. Like I just think that it's time consuming, and I don't think that it's the way to go naturally, because you mostly will not win that war. So
Mm.
focus on the things that you can do. For me, what is important is, if you are building a brand, if you are building a name, protect that name, because building brands in 20 in like today's world is very important. People shop names, people shop things that are recognizable. I think you should protect that. But I think that when it comes to innovation, innovation is often a wave. People are going to tap into it. People are going to be
Right.
inspired. And what you can do is just position yourself as an industry leader.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Remy. That's definitely a mindset shift, because I think a lot of business owners and founders are thinking the other way, like, oh, I'm the first and I must be the only and all of that. And like you said, it's not really realistic and it's not sustainable. to think like that. So thank you for that insight. So I want to now talk about the way the world is going in terms of like with the US, there's the tariffs now to ship into the US. So any consumers buying US consumers, sorry, buying goods from brands located outside of the US now have to pay the tariff, and that's causing a lot of brands to really rethink their marketing and also rethink their strategy. What do you think about that? And do you think that because of the tariffs and that policy, that a lot of consumer brands are going to start looking into, you know, other markets that are easier perhaps to penetrate?
I don't really think so, because at the end of the day, there's no bigger market than the US market. That's just the truth.
Hmm.
And so tariff or not, we are not going to focus. If you are not like in the Nigerian market, you're not going to leave the US market and say, "Oh, let me come to the Nigeria." Like, what is really the quantity of what you're going to get in comparison
Hmm.
to like how big the US market is? And so I think
Hmm.
what happens is economics is just going to economics, which is that consumers will just have to pay more for things, which is already happening. Like people are increasing
But do
their
you think
price.
consumers are willing? Do you think US consumers are willing to pay more? Because I've seen a lot of, again, you can see I'm always on TikTok. I've seen a lot of TikTok videos of US consumers maybe ordering a package from the UK or somewhere else, getting an email or a notice from DHL or one of the other carriers saying, "Oh, you now have to pay." Maybe if the item is was $60, you now have to pay an $80 tariff, and then they just say, "I'm not going to pay it." They can send the item back. So that seems to be the prevailing, you know, atmosphere
Yeah.
around what's
Yeah. So
happening.
yes, people don't want to pay tariffs. Even in Nigeria, I don't want to pay tariffs. But if I go to a shop and the price is the price, I'm going to buy it. And so what businesses are just doing is they are moving the bulk of the products to the US and then they are distributing within the US. But things have gotten more expensive in the US. Like even in the US, like even like goods, clothing, like everything, the companies are valued, they've added the tariffs that they are paying into the cost of the product, which is what is going to happen. So even
So
in
you're saying
beauty
companies
now,
are like warehousing in the US and then shipping to their
exactly,
clients from the US.
exactly. Which is what even when we were at Natural Girl Weeks, that was what we were doing. We were having like a third party. I thought I was even going to talk about that, but we had like this third party partner who would stock the goods and distribute within customers for us. That's what we are doing in the UK now for Regal, because Regal's second market is actually the UK right now, and so we have our products shipped to the UK and then we distribute within the UK. So ultimately, what is going to happen is consumers are going to be the ones to pay for for those differences, right? Yes, it's an inconvenience to businesses. People would hope that they wouldn't have to do this, but I think that ultimately it's consumers that will have to pay more for products. I'm seeing a lot of these brands that you're talking about now. They are making announcements to say, "Oh, you won't have to pay tariffs anymore. We are now in the US." But what they are not telling their consumers is we've added the cost to the cost of goods, right? And so at the end of the day, it's the consumers that pay, which is why consumers should make sure that they're making good decisions, because businesses are really not going to cut their profits because you chose a new leader. You guys will have to pay
Right.
for that. So that's what I think.
The the reality of it is all hitting home. But yeah, no, I
Yeah,
completely agree. I think you're right. I think you're right. I mean, business is gonna business, and you know, if people want to buy into certain brands, which obviously they always will want to, they're just going to have to pay a
yeah,
little bit more. So
yeah.
yeah, it's,
What happens is that at first there's always like this pushback, but you're going to see that nice dress on Instagram and you're going to want it. So,
you're just gonna have
so
to, you know, just earn more coin. That's it. Oh, I love it.
yeah,
I love this. Okay, okay. I think that's very fair and very true. So let's now pivot to talk a bit more about how you've been able to grow and scale the brand, and if you've taken on any external investment, because I know a lot of founders, and there's always this sort of talk about, you know, how do you really grow as a business, as an SME trying to get bigger. You can either go the venture capital route, you can take a loan from a financial institution. There's angel investing, which is raising money from family and friends. There's dipping into your own savings. So there's just many ways that you know, businesses, and tried and tested ways that businesses have tried to grow. But what have you found to be the most effective way in terms of financing for you to grow and scale Texture Science Labs and Regal?
yeah. So I think that for For me, it started with my our own funds, right? It started with our own funds. Like, we we had some money, obviously, from like natural gowies. And because even from starting, from putting, before this thing even became anything tangible that anyone could see, there was a lot of money that went into like research, like working with like a good R&D team, experimenting, developing. And so we put a lot of our own money into the business. And when we saw that there was going to be traction in these products that we're developing, the next thing we did was family and friends. So we did a family and friends round where, people that already knew me, some of them my friends, some of them were just people that followed my journey, and I sold this thing that I was doing. Some of them even reached out, as I started to document this thing I wanted to do. And that was helpful. Eventually we had to like go out to seek, venture funding, and we got some. We didn't actually even close our round, but we were able to get people who believed in what we were building. And so we're able to get some investments. But we've actually not really gone fully venture in terms of like right now, the percentage of equity that our investors have in the company is still below 5%. That just so we've not really like gone out to like, raise a huge amount of money. And for me, it's always been about what do we need for like this current stage to be able to like get to this point. And it's not an easy journey, it's not an easy terrain. Like, it's very hard to raise money, especially when you're a black person, especially when you're a woman. It's like less than 2% of venture funding is going to women, not to talk of like, women like me. So I think that that is important. But I feel like for businesses, one of the things that it's really crucial is you need to really think in the stages of like what you are building. It might be very hard for you to go all out to raise like this huge amount of money for what you are doing. That's why I think like building in stages matter, where at some point you might have to put your own money, where this thing is something that no one has can really like picture yet. At a certain stage, it's easier for you to get your day one believers, like your family, your friends, your, people who believe in what you are doing, to sort of like buy into and put their money into what you are doing. And then when you have a certain level of traction, it's easier to go to angel investors or like institutional funds to say that this is the roadmap to what we are building. This is what the industry size is. This is the amount of the markets that we can capture, and this is like how this thing scales, right? And especially for product businesses, it's harder. If we were building like an app or like a what's it called, a tool, it's probably going to be easier for us to to raise money, because people are looking at how easy those things can scale. But when you are building a product, especially like consumer innovation, where it's like, what is the adoption going to be like? What is the distribution going to be like? How many people would really use this thing for like how many days in a year? Those are the things that venture people are thinking about before they give you money. And so you have to be able to like conceptualize it in stages and be able to like give them that picture that they are really looking for, as far as how scalable is this thing, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
all of
yeah.
that being said, even having like all the right numbers, having all the right presentation, it's still really hard to build things and to like raise money. So what I would say is you have to also be able to build without raising money, because you might not raise the money. Yeah. So
The reality
it's
check, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm, mm.
exactly. Another thing is, as you are building, you have to look for ways to sort of like monetize, right? So what are the little, the product doesn't have to be perfect. What is the thing that the product can do now, and find people to buy it? I recently saw this brand that, not this product that just launched in the US. I think it's the closest thing to breast milk that they've launched. And I think that they've
Mm.
been building for 9 years. They've literally
Wow.
raised, I think, almost $100 million, and they've actually not. They just launched their product for the first time, and so when I think about what we're building at Texture Science Labs, that is actually the kind of patience that we need, because we're literally starting something from the ground up. But the reality is, I know I'm a Nigerian woman, I'm in Nigeria. No one is giving me money to wait for 5 years for me to launch a product. Like, their ventures like that are not even like accessible to me. And so, what is important is what can we do in the first 2 years to start making money, so that we can pay salaries, so that we can build something. And then the innovation is still going on. Like every day, we are still working on this product. We are still trying to make it better. There's still a version of the product that is like, this is what we really want to have in the market, right? And so you need to just think about it in that kind of scope to say, we have the MVP. What can we present to the market that we can sell while we still continue building, while we can still sustain this business, while we are still going after maybe raising money to be able for to be to give us the ability to do it in this certain way. So
Mm.
entrepreneurship is just a lot of calculation, thinking about where you are, what is available to you, what is accessible to you, and using your own strengths, and also being very aware of what your weaknesses are.
Hmm. Thank you so much for everything you said on this topic. And I particularly want to touch on kind of the patience element that you mentioned, like, like obviously try and make money in the short term and do what you can, but also be thinking long term. I think that one of the flaws that I've noticed with how entrepreneurship is presented, especially online, is it's almost like a get rich quick scheme. The way I see people talking about it, and I mean, from my own personal experience, I know it's really not like that. So I'm just really happy that you highlighted that it can kind of be a slow burn, and you have to
It
have the
is.
stamina.
It is. And I think I was watching like Emma Grade talk uh in one of her videos, and she was just talking about like most things take time. Like it's like most of the businesses and the powerhouses that you know today, it took years. It took some of the businesses that I really look at, them even getting to the stage where we are right now took about 10 years. Not to talk of like when they even really then achieved the kind of things that I'm trying to achieve, which is why I think that the internet has been one of the greatest blessings to us as a generation. I don't think people really value what the internet has done for us as much, because like how else would a business like mine be been able to tell our stories directly to customers? How else would we have been able to connect to people who believe in our
True.
vision the way we do? Like, where are we going to get money for like international press publications or TV, like and all of these things? And so it's
Yeah.
about, yeah. So in as much as like we need to like really tap into social media, we also really need to realize that social media is really helping us to minimize the time, but ultimately you can't speed up some things. Ultimately some things just take time, especially when you're building businesses. And that's not to say that there's not some people that it just happens very quickly for them, right? There are people that are lucky, but they are not the norm. It's not the norm at all. The normal thing is
Yeah.
for things to actually happen in stages,
In
and people
stages.
need to be very, because even the entrepreneurs that you see online who are doing things, a lot of them, it also took them time. The business they are working on right now might not have taken as much time. But what about the businesses that they failed at? What about this career that they've had? What about, even for me, sometimes when people ask me that, oh, you use social media, I'm like, I literally spent my entire life doing social media and doing marketing for other people. Like, I came in with experience. So, like, I already know how to do these things. It's not really new for me. If you don't have
Yeah.
experience in these things, for you, you are starting at from a different point than I am starting, or than I started with, right? Because I had that. I might not have had money, but I had the skills, I had the knowledge, and I could use that for myself. For other people, it could be a network, it could be, relations, right? And so at the end of the day, you have to like tap into what you have and then try to like, leverage that.
I can I could not agree more. Like the way I'm just clapping in my mind, I could not agree more. Not everybody has the same starting point, and I think it's really important to for new entrepreneurs or people who are just starting up in the beauty industry or in any industry to take stock, like you said, of their strengths and their weaknesses and not compare their journey to anybody else's. I think it's become really fashionable to look at somebody else and think, oh, if this person can do it in this time, why can't I? But it's like, you're not this person. They have
Yeah. I mean, you can.
advantages.
If anybody can do it, you can. It's just that you just have to, be on the journey to doing that. Like, it's not just going to happen overnight.
It's not just going to
That's just
happen.
it.
Yes, yes. And I think sometimes people have advantages that you may know of and also that you may not know of. You know what I mean? So it's
Exactly.
just important to stay realistic, but also to know you can achieve greatness, but just stay
Yeah.
realistic.
Yeah. I agree.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so we're rounding up now. I feel like we've had a really in-depth conversation. We've talked about a lot of things, and I've certainly learned a lot. So, just as we're rounding up, I want to ask you, what is the future of Texture Science Labs, and any sort of final encouraging words you'd give to the founders and the builders out there who are watching and listening?
The future for us is very exciting. We our goal, like the one goal that we have, is to change the future of hair. And whether that's in hair extension now, but like we have like more things that we want to think of. And in hair extensions, we have like more categories that we want to like get into. We want to create like this gold standard for like when people think of hair extension, the way they think of human hair, the way they think of synthetic hair, they begin to think of Rexy as this gold standard. And so that's something that we work towards like every single day, right? Right now, the closest goals that we have is our retail expansion. We're going to be in retail before the end of the year in like locations
Oh,
that are very
fantastic.
exciting to us, because every single time that I'm gagged is when I see people's reactions to the product in real life. And that just tells me something. We need to put the product in people's hands. And that's what we're currently working on right now. Obviously, expanding our production line, because we need to be able to produce the products to be able to like sell them. Um, and ultimately, just imagining like all the products, all the categories that we can launch off this foundation that we are laying right now. Like that's like the bigger picture for me. And what I would want to tell like people building, founders, entrepreneurs out there is, number one, there's nothing out of reach for you. You just have to like really want it. I saw a video, I think on Monday or on Sunday, that really spoke to me. And this lady was just on a TikTok saying that nothing else should matter than what you really want for yourself. If you really want something for yourself, we need to see it in the way you carry on. We need to see it in how you show up. And that's what I try to like really imbibe. Nobody really sent me to do any of these things that I'm doing. I wanted to do it for myself. So every single day that I wake up, I need to reflect that. The things that I do need to show that. I need to show up for myself, and I need to keep the promises that I make for myself. So if you've decided that you want to do something, that thing has to be the most significant thing. And every day you can like walk towards it, no matter like how slow, no matter like the little drops that you do. Like just wake up every day contributing to like this big picture that you've painted for yourself. The second thing is try as much as possible to journal your journey, to document your journey. You might not necessarily be a social media person, everybody doesn't have to, but just like in little ways to write, and just it helps you with clarity. I always talk about this thing where people say, well, I want to speak to someone about clarity. A lot of times the clarity that you're looking for is in you documenting yourself, right? You can see like how far you've come, you can see the mistakes you've made, you can see the gaps, you can see. So like those are the things that I practice, and I generally like share to people around me. And I think my closing statement would be that it is possible, right? When I think back at when I started thinking about this thing, I thought I was crazy. But look at like how far we've come. So like anything is possible as long as you want it, and you really go after it every day, you can achieve anything you want to achieve.
Remy, you are super duper inspirational. I've always thought so, but even more now that we've had this conversation. I also want to congratulate you on being one of the finalists for the Veuve Clicquot Bold Woman Awards. That is
Thank you.
that is it's really really huge, and I'm really really excited just to see your journey with that as well. So thank you for making time to talk to me, and I cannot wait to see what's coming next from Texture Science Labs and Regal and Rexy Hair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.